made easy with personalized service from a dedicated world-class private banker. It is living joyfully with the Stanbic World Elite cards that give exclusive access and discounts globally. It is investing skillfully with confidence and with foresight in Kenya and beyond, stepping into a bold future with limitless possibilities. And most importantly, it is planning wisely by you securing your family's future today and into tomorrow, and building a rich, lasting financial legacy. Start your growth journey today with Stanbic Private Banking. On the bench today, we've been telling you all evening, is the MD of KETRACO, Engineer Dr. John Mativo. He's been there for about 15 years now, so he knows a thing or two about transmission. And Engineer, we were talking about earlier on, Kenya has roughly about 10,000 kilometers of transmission lines right now. And we're going to need another 10,000 kilometers. Yet, KETRACO is doing all its projects through borrowing. Is that going to be possible, Engineer?
That's a question we have been asking ourselves. We have done basically close to 40 projects, infrastructure projects, totaling up to the 6,000 plus that we have added to the 3,000 that was there earlier when we took over from Kenya Power to bring it close to 10,000 kilometers. Government has had to borrow from World Bank, ADB, JKLIVE, and all other financing partners. And some of these loans that since I joined 15 years ago, that's what we are paying back today. And we've realized actually the last strategic plan, we were estimating 80% of our financing of projects in KETRACO or the country will come through development partners borrowing. But it was very clear when we did our current strategic plan that we had to start halving the numbers, so we expect only 40%. And it was very clear that we had to start thinking of other sources of financing to be able to meet the needs. Because in the end, Kenyans still want to receive power for, 15.5 million seconds in a year. You still want 24/7 to get power. So we need to bring up those lines to ensure that we have a stable and reliable grid. So we have to look for a solution outside government borrowing.
Yeah. And our power, if you compare Kenya's power, is more expensive than most places around the world. Why?
I think, let's start to break down the components that make the cost of power. First, definitely the input cost. So generation is a cost that comes on board. Kenya, basically, a lot of power comes from the hydros, which are anything below 3 shillings per kilowatt. Then you start getting imports from Ethiopia, coming to anything like 8.8, 8.5. So when you add imports from Ethiopia and Uganda, they're still below 10, around 10 shillings. The average cost of generation in Kenya is just above 10 point something. So then you have Kenyan coming almost at around 10. But then you have other cost of power that, like the thermal power, come at 23 shillings per US cent. So first is to input the cost of generation. The second thing is now the cost that you have to add the cost of transmission, because the product has to be got from where it was generated to where it's been consumed, and cost of distribution. So that has to come on board. Then the other then you have taxes that come on board, levies that come on board, support either the EPRA and also support rural REREC. But then you have this animal called losses, currently around 23%. You can imagine in business, 23% of your power. So Kenya Power might buy 1,000 megawatts from Kenyan, but what you can account for when bills are paid is 770. So basically losing 23%.
Losing how?
Losses. Basically, there are 3 kinds of losses. One of them are, let me talk about the technical losses. So anytime electricity goes through a wire, there's technical losses. You cannot, because of resistance. So if you touch a bulb or anything and it's warm, that change of electricity to heat, that's a loss that you've incurred. So the technical losses, it cannot be a zero, but you can try to reduce it as much as possible. Then you have you have transmission losses, then you have distribution losses. Basically the same concept, but if you have very long lines, distribution lines, the more they continue having losses. So simple mathematics is that if you double the voltage, you reduce the losses by a quarter. So it's because it is a fraction of actually a square. So you reduce the losses. So the higher the voltage, the less losses. So you have the technical losses due to transmission, technical losses due to distribution. Then you have this other animal that is called commercial losses. Commercial losses are either going to be because of meters that are not working, but a lot of it is also theft of power. So you still have a lot of people who are not paying power, either a swimming pool in your big house in Lavington is bypassed the meter, you're hitting it, or you get an industry not paying for that, it's part of it. So there are various reasons why you're not getting that. Then there's a lot of, still you had many people who, they were connected, they had electricity to their houses, especially in the rural areas, but the meters took some time. Now in Kenya Power has moved very fast to meter everybody, but you had people for some time who did not have meters, and you have electricity wires, so people are just consuming power, and that is losses. So that's the other component that also results in losses.
How do you monitor that? I mean, are you, or KPLC, are you able to monitor all those people who are tapping into, you know, the transmission line?
No, okay, the transmission line, there are very few people pick power, especially only large power consumers, maybe steel companies, cement, but technically most of it will be at household, whether it's slum areas or at high income areas. So that's what Kenya Power has is staff. We continuously look at the information that the numbers that are coming on board, and I guess using technology, able to tell which area does not work. So, yeah.
I still don't know why I still pay 50,000 shillings a month, and I don't have a factory in my home or anything. Maybe someone's tapping into my line and...
Yeah, probably. That's why it's important to double check everything. First, many people are paying high electricity bills, and that used to happen to my mom until I told her, okay, let me get rid of your fridge, let me get you a new fridge. Okay, spend anything like 25,000, but the power bill went down by half.
Because of the fridge, replacement of the fridge?
Yeah, it was an old motor that sentimental values, definitely my parents don't want to get rid of it, but it was costing so much money. So that's why it's important that regularly you get somebody who can actually do efficiency monitoring, just come and check everything and confirm that there's no item in your house or even a factory that you're losing power, and come, and the energy sector is quite clear in terms of supporting people in terms of measure efficiency in the system to reduce their losses within themselves. Then the culprits who are still in power, there has to be a way to catch them.
Yeah, I was going to say, can we catch those guys who have been tapping into my lines?
Hopefully, I hope so. But that's my sister company, utility company. Kenya Power best to answer that.
You.
Yes.
Okay, look, the 10,000 kilometers of transmission that we require, what % will be undertaken by PPPs, private-public partnerships? Okay,
if you look at the transmission master plan and the least cost power plan, so electricity we plan altogether, we have approximately 90 projects that are due to be rolled out. And currently we estimate almost 20% of those projects can easily be done under PPP, because not every project can make it as a PPP, because it has to be a project that is bringing benefits to be done by private sector compared to public sector. So some of the projects definitely will have to be done using the normal financing.
But it's going to be possible to get those PPPs, I mean, what percentage?
Right now we talk about 20%.
1/5
yes.
will be PPPs.
Yes.
Costs, plus minus?
Okay, currently our financing gap that we have for those projects, because we have more or less got 10% of the financing, so we have approximately a need of $5 billion to roll out US dollars. So that's why you divide by 20 years, 250 million, which is approximately at 3 billion shillings. That's what we require to be invested in new projects at every time. We already have some projects through World Bank, ADB that are just starting, but we still have a big need of projects to be undertaken here. So I'll estimate anything like $1.5 billion at minimum.
And you still have a debt of what, 23 billion?
Within
pending bills?
No, yes, we have a pending bill of approximately 23 billion. Most of them are claims by contractors because of either idle time when they get stopped, when they're constructed. So you get projects getting finished anything like that 6 months behind schedule because of those stoppages, because we've been dependent on exchequer funding to pay for compensation. Typically, even the projects that have been borrowed to pay for, government borrows the part of paying the construction and consultancy, but government still pays compensation. And it has been a challenge in the last few years to pay compensation. So the contractor goes to the ground, is stopped. We have to look for money and pay that. So that's actually bills that are being incurred. And that's part of the risk we want to pass from public sector to private sector.
Look, once AFDB and World Bank get on board and they invest, they're going to need to recoup their money, aren't they, at some point?
Yes.
Does that mean that our electricity prices will go higher at some point?
Not necessarily, because all the projects that are coming on board, for example, let me give the one that we have tender going on. We're putting some equipment called STATCOMs and substations around Susu in that area. This should allow us, currently we're getting 200 megawatts from Ethiopia. So once we put the two equipments, we should be able to bring a minimum of 400, 600, 800. Because remember, I said earlier, one of the cheapest sources of power to Kenya is actually power from Ethiopia. So that will definitely, it could cost some money to put the project, but it's going to reduce the cost of power coming on board. So we're doing a line, new substation in Marekani. So what will happen is that the biggest source of consumption of thermal power is Mombasa. So once we finish the project, which has cost definitely some money, but we're going to displace the use of thermal generation. So it's both a win, a plus in terms of increase the cost of capital cost of the project, but the benefits reduce the cost, they reduce the cost of the electricity. Yes.
KETRACO is already getting a tariff.
Yes.
Will the tariff remain the same once the PPPs come on board?
Okay, the current tariff we have is purely to take care of our operation cost and our maintenance. You remember, all the 40 or so projects we've done as KETRACO have been financed by National Treasury. So government, we are paying through taxes. So government is paid for the capital cost. So what we get paid, approximately 5-point-something billion Kenya shillings, is purely going to ensure that we can undertake our maintenance operations, all the projects we have undertaken. So that's ongoing. PPPs will definitely come where somebody will invest, is actually coming is money. For example, Africa 50, they put at the table approximately 45 billion Kenya shillings to do 2 transmission lines. So this money will be able to do the construction, the construction, the APC, design and construction. They'll be able to pay for compensation. They'll also be able to pay for taxes. They'll be able to pay for project development cost and other taxes. So they'll have invested money. Then we pay them after the project has been completed over a long time, almost 30 years. That's what they get paid for, yeah, through the tariff.
Okay, given the history of a very skewed tendering process, tell us more about Africa 50 and other companies involved in this.
Okay. Basically, Africa 50 is an organization that was set up by African governments. So the other projects I talked about are financed by ADB, the African Development Bank. So African countries came together approximately in 2017 and set up Africa 50, which is there to finance private sector. So whether citizen and the rest, so they come and finance infrastructure in our case. So Kenya is among the 5 largest shareholders of Africa 50. That's why we sit on the board of Africa 50. So more or less it's ours, if I can say. So they have been assisting to resource mobilize for projects across Africa. They did a bridge in Senegal. They've done quite a number of projects across. And I think there was a meeting in Nairobi where Kenya was actually seeing that we have invested so much, we have now benefited from the money we've invested, and that's why the transmission lines were chosen. So that's Africa 50. So it's ours. The other party that is coming on board, technical, is Power Grid. Power Grid is the equivalent of KETRACO in India. So it's actually the 3rd largest transmission company in the world. They are almost 51% owned by the government. The rest are private investors. So what they've come together and put a joint partners, Africa 50 doing a lot of financing, Power Grid are doing a lot of technical input into the whole thing, but they're all equity players in the whole thing. I mean, advantage is that if you look at the numbers Africa 50 is bringing on board, because they're also affiliated to our governments and ADB, they're bringing money at 7.25. That's much lower than even the Eurobond that was recently announced. And at the Power Grid coming on board, doing thousands and thousands of kilometers, they can actually get lower EPC costs. I mean, economics of scale, they can bring their project costs. So actually, they come at a lower cost in terms of the construction part of it, and they also bring cheap money together. So it's a good combination of the two.
You mentioned Power Grid.
Yes.
What's the relation between Power Grid and Adani, especially after the cancellation of the Adani deal with KETRACO?
Okay, India, approximately, I think that was almost 25 years ago, they unbundled. Actually, long time ago, when you go back to the previous millennium, Power Grid used to be like KETRACO, 100% depend on the exchequer. Government borrows, gives you money, and the time the government is broke, doesn't whatever. They had also, I think they've had the largest blackout in the world, so they decided that they have to look for another model. So they open up the space for both Power Grid and other private players to come on board. So you have that Power Grid. So Adani plus other players, I think there are almost 10 or so private sector players who do projects, PPP projects. So Adani is just one of the many that have done PPP projects in India. So Power Grid also does public projects, but also now the space was open for them to also do projects and invest in the money And currently, actually, Power Grid is the 11th most profitable company in India, and Adani is just one of the independent power transmission companies in India.
Speaking of blackouts, you just mentioned a moment ago, last year there were 2 major ones.
Yes.
Nationwide.
Yes.
How?
Jeff, our system, unfortunately, although we have increased the numbers, as I said, from 3,000 to almost 10,000, we still have lines that have serious constraints. Let me pick 2 examples. One of them is the line from Moroni down to Chamos. That's somewhere in Western Kenya. Now, this is a line, Moroni is just off Kisumu, so it goes to Chamosit. This single line supplies power to everybody in Kericho, Bomet, parts of Narok, Transmara side, Migori, Homa Bay, Nyamira, Kisii, all that part. So
one line?
One line. The line was done with a capacity of 80 megawatts. Unfortunately, we push almost, the system operator, almost 120 megawatts. So you can actually, the demand is so much in Western Kenya. If anybody from Western Kenya or that part of the former, let me say the former Kericho, Nyanza area went for Christmas, they know very well that in the evening there used to be blackout and they used to complain that it's a blackout, but typically it was power rationing, just managing the power demand. The line has little capacity. One of the blackouts was caused by that line. It was overloaded and it fed back into the system and they end up cascading failure. Another line that is quite notorious is, again, because of no redundancy, so you only have one line. We have a line that serves Nairobi almost 50%, 25% of the power that is in the country. The line carries 500 megawatts. And if something small happens to that line, well, last year we lost one just circuit breaker on a line, poop, and the moment you had that, the hydros and the geothermal power plants were separated. None of them could supply power to the country. Cascading failure, just one plant after the other, off. So it's the issue of lack of redundancy. So for us to be able to beat that, and that's why we are actually doing a line to form a ring system around Nairobi system at 400 kV, so that there should be no time you can lose. You should be able to lose one substation, whether due to normal maintenance or accident, but power should be able to go around. So we still need to put more and more infrastructure. And one of the things I keep on saying, Jeff, let me compare 2 cities, is Nairobi and Tokyo. Tokyo, because I stayed there for 4 years. Nairobi I stayed for many years. Tokyo is 3.5 times bigger than Nairobi in terms of surface area. Population 7 times bigger than Nairobi. You know, Tokyo has 1,582 substations. One substation only serves 1.8 square kilometers. Nairobi only has 72 substations, is serving 12 square kilometers. And that's the reason why, if Kenya Power want to do maintenance in South B, they have to tell people on Sunday between 9 and 5, you'll not have power because you're doing maintenance. Those are the countries that have redundancy on redundancy. They do maintenance, they do everything else. They lose a substation, but power continues being served. So we still have to put a lot of infrastructure to ensure that we get to a point that people are assured of 24/7. For all those millions of seconds, you don't lose power even for a second the whole time.
And JKIA.
Yes.
Come on, man. How do we do that? Our national treasure.
Back again. Let's look at Heathrow. Good example recently, yes.
Heathrow recently.
Yes. Heathrow has 2 systems to supply power. There are 2 transmission lines step down to supply. So enough to supply, any of them could supply power, but they run primarily on one line. So what happened is Heathrow, one of the transformers burned, and it caused the other to burn. It's an old substation. Then the Heathrow, there was no power for some time. Everybody was wondering, but we have two separate. Then they discovered the switch system is manual. It was not automated. So to move from one system that had a problem to the new system was actually a manual system. And that's one of the things that have been recommended. So there should be auto switch from one side to the other side. Back now to JKI. We basically just have line coming from Embakasi all the way to airport. If anything happens to the line, that means you lose the airport. But let me speak something about Heathrow. Back to Heathrow again. I love the lessons learned. Heathrow has big generators that someone did not pick. I don't know why. But next to Heathrow, there's an modern data center. Now, what they did, the data center, which consumes power almost 4 times Heathrow, they have put almost 15 small generators. So not big generators. Don't go for big generators, small generators, so that you can all pick at one time. Even if one has a problem, you are sure you can override that. So the things we are learning, first, maybe the system they have, the generators in JKI should be much better. I mean, JKI should be able to run for hours. I know Heathrow was supposed to run for 27 hours without any power from outside. Something failed, but similar to that. But secondly, JKI has to get power from more than one source. from there, maybe Mbakasi and different substation. And speaking on the same line, even with CAF coming, we're having AFCON coming on board.
Yeah.
FIFA is very clear in CAF. Your stadiums have to be able, you have to demonstrate 2 sources of power to the stadium. Otherwise, you have to run a generator.
Does JKIA have enough generators?
They have big generators. I don't know if they're enough. Sorry, I need to find out from them to tell us how many generators they have. But there's something they need to work on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Explain to us.
I mean, I've not looked at the design of generators in JKI, so let me not speak on their behalf, but definitely they have to work in a way that they can separate the terminal buildings to run on their own generators, run on a different generator. So whatever happens, you're sure that even if one has a problem, but it only affects a terminal build rather than everything else. But I would want to see the design to be able to know how to go forward. Then definitely getting more connected to different points of the high voltage infrastructure.
Okay, let's go move on to the Gilgil Thika Nairobi Konza, which was cancelled after the Adani deal.
Yes.
What happens now?
What happens now, because first, as told you, it's a very key line because it's a line that will ensure that Nairobi has a 400 kV ring around the greater metropolitan area. So you have Gilgil, actually the land is next to Malewa in Naivasha. So you go to Thika, we go down to Malawi, which is on the eastern side of Nairobi. We go down to Konza, back to Isinya, then back to Suswa. So it's a whole complete ring. So we require that kind of ring system. London has 400 kV ring, Tokyo has 500 kV ring. So we require that. So this project is extremely urgent, but it was cancelled. So what we are doing currently, because we are finishing a certain process, but today we had a long discussion with both World Bank to support us with a grant element to come and get a transnational investor to package this project and go for competitive bidding and get a new PPP investor. So that's something that we plan to do very soon. So it's up in our in-tray to get that project done. It's required like yesterday. Seriously like yesterday. So that's one of the projects. I know later we have another project that was in the Dani package that's called Todboro. So a substation to support a big part of Homa Bay, Kisumu, Nyamira area. We plan to package the whole project again, go into competitive bidding for PPP, but this one we plan to do it with local investors. So once my people are ready, we'll actually advertise, get the insurance companies, pension schemes locally to come invest, and we move very fast and do the substation.
Are you confident? Are you confident you'll get an investor?
Yes. We have a lot of inquiries. Actually, if you look at the numbers we're looking at in terms of the return on equity and the rest, I think electricity is one area that you can invest. Pension schemes can invest and have a good return, just beyond the normal treasury bonds and real estates. To me, that's something that we have got a lot of inquiries. I come on board. I've virtually spoken to every bank. I've virtually spoken to every pension schemes, the big ones. They are really eager for us to put this in the market. A
lot of people will be asking right now, critics will be saying, will this process be transparent?
Yes. Jeff, I can assure the process is transparent. The whole thing has, the good thing about PPP, unlike maybe the Public Procurement Disposal Act, the PPP has so many gates for approval. So somebody gives a proposal, KETRACO itself has to get satisfied, or any other contracting authority, that we have a good deal. And you're basically looking at in terms of, does this project bring value for money? So are the benefits coming on board making any sense? Secondly, have they demonstrated they can do it at a cheaper cost? I'm looking about the whole life cycle, not just the construction part of it, or a name they can do it cheaper. So that's on the checks. You check about affordability, both to the people who are going to be paying that service, also affordability to the government. So there are a number of checks, but you have to go back to the committee. It approves the PP committee. You get approval, then you prepare the detailed documents, what they call the project development phase. You go back again, you internally, but again, you go to the committee, they approve. Then you come and negotiate a contract. In all those risks, everything else, you have to go back to the committee approval, you have to go to the AG approval. Then us in the energy sector, we have to go to EPRA. You can have, it may be tick everywhere, but EPRA might say, here we are, tariffs cannot hold this. So there are many checks and balances. Secondly, the cost of the projects, I've done projects for 15 years, KETRACO has done that. But we also have tenders going on right now, because one of the projects, even with Africa 50, Tanzania opened the Tanzania-Zambia interconnector. So we have the latest prices. Internally, we have the price. So we have prices that we can compare and confirm that. Then the second biggest price is, apart from construction, is the cost of compensation. That's our bread and butter. We know how much it's going to cost. So you can walk down taxes, everything else, to confirm that all the costs that we're getting on board are making sense. And remember, project costs are pass-through cost. So the cost of debt is a pass-through cost. I mean, he gets a loan term sheet, he brings it, and that's what he gets paid. So what you negotiate is return on equity. So it's actually a lot of so many checks and balances in the whole process.
Tell me something. Earlier on, you're talking about getting cheap power from Ethiopia, right? And it provides, what, 10% of Kenya's power?
Yes, currently we are importing 200 megawatts, which is close because we consume 2,300, but average 2,000 megawatts.
Does that make sense? Because, you cabled more than 1,000 kilometers of transmission from Ethiopia to Suswa.
Yes.
And we're only getting 200 megawatts.
Okay, the capacity of the line is 2,000 megawatts. So it's connecting both Ethiopia and Kenya, but it's also part of the network that connects all the way to Isinya, all the way to the Arusha, Dodoma, all the way to the border of Zambia and all the way to Southern. So it's part of the bigger cycle, interconnection. So we have 200 megawatts. The power purchase agreement that we have is that by next year, December, we increase to 400 megawatts. Now, the only reason why we're not getting the 400 megawatts today is because I need to put some equipment on the line to ensure that we have a rigid line. So the new substations in Kimuka and what we call STATCOMs, they're just equipment to ensure they can manage the voltage. So when the voltage tries to go up and down, you have this equipment that can manage to stabilize. There's one in Electricana, put another one in Suswa, another one in Rabai. So that will allow us to bring more power. So we're looking forward to finish this project, which is currently under tender, so that we can import more power from Ethiopia to the 400. And Tanzania also waiting to import power from Ethiopia. Yes.
In the meantime, the vandals keep at it on that transmission line.
Yes. Typically, Jeff, we have 3 unfortunate cases of types of vandalism. One of them in this particular line was just the issue of people using slings and stones, or even some of them actually guns, to shoot the insulators. And once they shoot enough, you have actually a fault on the line. We had a fault 2 weeks ago on a Thursday, where we lost the line, the 200 megawatts, and we actually had to repair it, I think, on a Sunday. So we lost some 5 or so days. We could not bring the cheaper power to Kenya. Then every time, you remember, I told you earlier, power from Ethiopia is coming at 8.5 shillings. When we displaced, we used thermal power because rainy season, wind was not blowing so wide, so we had to go for thermal, which is at 23. So you can imagine the same 200 megawatts now that was being bought at a cheaper price, now it's been bought at a more expensive price. So I can assure you, your bill will slightly go up because of that one incident. But this is the vandalism, and we spent a lot of time talking to the young men and the wazees in that place, a lot of community engagement with the national government. So I believe now they understand that what they're doing is not just a game.
Because you can't police 700 kilometers plus.
We cannot police.
No.
So we need to do a lot of engagement. I know the other thing is we have a fiber cable that Ethiopia is dependent on in terms of data transfer from Ethiopia all the way to the marine cable. Again, that gets vandalized quite a lot of times. So we try as much as possible. So we have that vandalism that, unfortunately, it adds no value to anybody. But you also have the other vandalism, typical maybe somewhere in other areas where there's still metal parts, they still. Then
like another, the copper and all that?
The copper is another nuisance that occurs. I mean, they come to a substation, it's still some copper, then, or some. Actually, by the way, last week we had 6 towers of Kenya Power between Olkaria and Naivasha that came down.
Because?
Somebody stole some parts of the chuma, then it came down. So actually, power to Naivasha in that area, now Kenya Power to bring power from other areas to actually bypass that area. So that has just, I talked to the MD of Kenya Power, they have managed to restore the line back, but you can imagine the waste of time that we do that. So that's another thing. Copper, in our substation, people come and try to steal, both us and Kenya Power. Kenya Power also has transformers and the rest, so they have more incidences. But to us, those are the key things. We try as much as possible to use, we have a toll number 991, where somebody can call and report cases. But I urge Kenyans, if you see somebody stealing or vandalizing, he's not adding any value to anybody. You're the person and me who's going to get hurt from that.
Yeah.
Yes.
In 2021, President Uhuru Kenyatta banned the sale of scrap metals. Did that help at all?
Yes. Apparently it helped. I mean, we stayed for incidences without having any incidences of copper and steel for some time. So that occurred for some time. I mean, we have seen the blessings of that ban. Yes. So, I mean, there has to be a way to, I know it was returned back, but it has to be managed. And I keep on, at least my philosophy is this, that we need to expose people who are doing vandalism. And the best way to expose them is to ensure that nobody can sell or buy scrap metal without paying withholding tax. That means when there's a kilogram of steel, you have to pay withholding tax. Now, those guys do not want to enter the system, do not want to have their PIN number and the amount of metal they have stolen, or sorry, they have sold. So we just make it illegal to anybody having steel or any scrap metal needs to show there has to be a traceability of where it came from, and somebody must pay. I'd rather even pay 1% withholding tax, but you enter the system. That's one of the things that we really need to push.
Have people been arrested?
Yes. Oh, many people have been arrested, both Kenyans and non-Kenyans.
And jailed?
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, they've been jailed because we've had statements being taken, so that has happened. But the other thing is to stop also export. Kenya is a big exporter of copper. I don't know how we export copper.
We have no copper.
We have no copper mines.
This is not DRC, and we have no copper.
Yeah.
So it's from your transmission lines? And
also the transformers for Kenya Power.
Oh, Lord.
Yes.
All right, we're going to take a break, engineer, come back. I'm learning so much today, man. I feel almost an expert in electricity, even though I'm paying 50,000 shillings a month. But, that's another story. Keep tweeting, folks. I know you have lots of comments, lots of questions for the engineer at Koinange Jeff. At Citizen TV Kenya, the hashtag is JKLIVE. JKLIVE takes a break. We'll be back in a moment. Living joyfully with the Stanbic world-class elite cards that give exclusive access and discounts globally. It is investing skillfully with confidence and foresight in Kenya and beyond, stepping into a bold future with limitless possibilities. And most importantly, it is planning wisely by you securing your family's future today and into tomorrow, and building a rich, lasting financial legacy. Start your growth journey today with Stanbic Bank Private Banking. Engineer John Mativo, MD of Ketraco, on the bench. He knows his stuff, folks. My goodness. No wonder he's been there 15 years. Let's go to the components of cost of input generation, right? And transmission, and losses, and taxes. And yet you only gain 0.5%. Well, KPLC collects something like what, 230 plus billion? And your share is what, about 5B?
5B, yes. Typically, Jeff, in most countries, actually across the world, transmission is, apart from the initial capital cost, transmission is not a very heavy cost on the line, because the line that was done in was commissioned in 1958 is still serving us as a country, connecting ourselves to Uganda. So transmission lines stay for a long time. So it's the initial capital, then operations is not, you can stay for a couple of years actually without doing any major operations. So that's why the cost is much, much lower. So that's the transmission cost. The cost definitely, the big part of the cost is definitely all generation, pays a lot of cost, and distribution. Then the taxes, those are typically out of the hands of Ketraco. Then losses is one of the things. So coming from a perspective of Ketraco, what I can also say is what can Ketraco do to reduce the cost of power? So that's what I would want to answer more in terms of one, what do we do to reduce losses, both especially the technical losses. Definitely to do lines that will displace the use of long distribution lines. For example, the whole of Western, anything from Kisumu going up, Lesos, all that is dependent on distribution lines. So the former, whether it's Kakamega or those counties, Kenya Power has to do lines either from Musaga all the way from Kibos to supply power. Now, when they do that, the line is tapped at many places. Every time you tap at that places, and you have many people sharing the same line, you have more losses. It's a lower voltage line. So one of the lines we plan to do is the line from Kibos all the way to Kakamega to Musaga. That means at Kakamega, we put a substation. So all these long lines that were there for Kenya Power reduce in length. So there are less people sharing the same line, and the lines are much shorter. That should be able to both reduce both go a long way in terms of reducing distribution losses. The other line is, a good example was Loitoktok, 120 kilometers along 33 kV line to supply power. Definitely losses are going to be high. We did a 132 kV line to supply that. So we're doing quite a lot. Then you also remember that all these towns that were using diesel generators, that's expensive cost. Yeah. Whether Mombasa, whether it's Lamu, whether it's Garissa. So we do lines to displace the use of those thermal power. Remember, they always, 23 shillings per kilowatt, then be able to bring more power that is cheaper. So Mombasa, very soon, by June, we have Marekani substation energized. Maybe thermal only run during peak hours. The rest of the time, they bring power from Olkaria or from Ethiopia all the way down to Mombasa, and now Garissa is part of the grid. So that's what they're basically doing in terms of reducing those losses, reinforcing the old lines that were there before to ensure that both technical and technical losses on both sides are reduced. The second thing is to do lines to have in places that had cheaper sources of power. One of the lines we're doing is Losuk to Lesos. We carefully chose the position of Losuk and the line to pass through the geothermal fields by going to be done by GDC. So again, GDC coming at almost 10 shillings per kilowatt. That 300 megas they plan to come on board is going to displace thermal power. Again, apart from just increasing the capacity of power, but it's going to displace cheaper power. So that's what another thing that Ketoko does, is do transmission lines and choose locations that it passes, that anybody who has financing can come on board and put up the generation that is much cheaper than the existing generation. So we play our part in terms of reducing losses and bringing more cheaper power into the grid.
Someone once talked about nuclear power. Is that possible?
It's possible right now. Because they have smaller models, so you don't have to build the big nuclear power plants that used to be before. I know a sister company, Nupair, has been looking at a site near Kilifi, Oyoma, something like that. So we planned with them in terms of how they connect to the grid. So one of the lines comes to Marekani and line comes to Nairobi. But they're still doing a lot of public participation, discussion with the locals to ensure that they meet the requirements of putting up a nuclear power plant. So it's possible to come on board, because now it's possible to actually bring a 500 megawatt nuclear plant. Doesn't have to be the massive ones.
And that would be a game changer?
Yeah, it would be a game changer, because first the cost is low, then you're having stable power. You know, unfortunately, we'd want to have more wind and solar into the system, but what is happening, it's a rainy season, so wind has gone down and solar has gone down in the country.
I mean, speaking of wind, has it been a success when you look at it? Because I was there and I saw those wind power turbines and then the Ketrako lines, 428 kilometers to Suswa. Has that been a success?
The numbers speak for themselves. It has been a success. Actually, there are days that on a good day, dry season, that you find maybe on a weekend, you find actually the wind plant produce almost 19% of the power that has been consumed in the country. So
19%?
19%. It goes actually all the way to 19%. On dry, definitely seasons where that is, where there's rainy season, then the demand, it comes much down. So it depends on the season. But definitely it's a success in terms of the amount of energy that has come into the grid from Lake Turkana. And
geothermal, is that on the increase?
Yes, currently the plants that should be coming very soon, GDC have already in Menengai, they already have a 35 megawatt plant. They are working on 2 35 megawatts. I think one should be coming by December on board a 35 megawatt plant. Then maybe 3-4 months later, another 35 megawatts should be coming. So approximately 70 megawatts of power should be coming to Menengai, additional to the 35, very shortly in the next 12 months or so. So that is quite good, because first it's cheap and it's stable. Yep. Then we have the Parker fields that once we finish our line, I was there in Parker, they already have a lot of steam that is just going to the air, waiting just to generate power. So they didn't finish my line. They require to get a generator to come on board and take advantage of that. Then we have much more power into the grid.
And solar power is not that much, huh? What, 20+%?
Solar power in Kenya is around 210 megawatts. The main ones, we have 3 plants in Eldoret, then we have the Garissa, 55, then we have, the other one is Malindi, Weru, where you have the other plant. So they're spread out, 210, but you know, basically solar, I think the capacity factor is around 23%, so they still, during dry season you get more solar and more stable. During cloud cover, then you it actually sometimes becomes disruptive to the grid. So it's something that to be able to manage those solar plants. But it's a plus to the grid. Yeah.
In an ideal world, how many megawatts would make Kenya glow, if you will, or light up? How many megawatts?
Oh, that's okay. The projection is that by in the next 20 years, we'll be at 10,000 megawatts. That's the projection. Wow. Now, when you start looking at emerging technology, let's look at that. So when you move away from having the generic growth, let's look at data centers. The data centers that are coming now, data centers are not even measured anymore in terms of bytes, and it's measured in terms of energy. So you talk about 1 gigawatt data plant, data center. With AI coming on board, data centers are going to be quite big. I know they're shopping around in terms of where are big substations to put a data center in that place, but you talk about new loads that are coming, 200, 300 megawatts that were not there before. The other one is e-vehicles. I know there was a news item regarding growth on that. And technology is changing so fast, Jeff. I can assure you that I was reading on ABB and a few other companies that are actually talking about in a couple of years they'll have ability to charge a vehicle in 6 minutes from 0 to 100%. So literally you'll be able to drive into the service station and charge your vehicle from 0 to that. But those are talking about now 500 kilowatt of power. Now, if you have 4 units in a service station, you're talking about 2 megawatts of which, I mean, the kind of load has never been seen before. Just one service station taking 2 megawatts of power, and if there are going to be 100 in Nairobi, you start looking at numbers quite differently in terms of the power demand that is going to be there. So there's what we have in terms of generic growth plus the Vision 2030 projects. But if you look at emerging technology, things are going to be very crazy from what we have. Yes.
Yeah. People are wondering, what is Ketraco's greatest source of income?
Currently, definitely the tariff we get to do O&M. The other the source of revenue that we're getting is the interconnector between Ethiopia and Tanzania. So Tanzania is buying power at 7 US cents from Ethiopia. They pay Ketraco 0.7 US cents, so the whole power will be 7.7. So they pay Ketraco for the use of our transmission infrastructure to take power down across the country. Then we have fiber. By the way, Jeff, all our transmission lines have optical fiber. So we have, by the way, one of the most reliable backbone of fiber network across the whole country. Because fortunately, they're up in the, nobody can go and touch those wires, because by the time you reach there, you'll be past tense. So it's quite reliable. So we have a network, and everybody, whether it's Liquid Telecom, Safaricom, they're all on board. All the companies are dealing with data. So it's also growing in terms of industry, in terms of resources. We are actually sometimes we have been carrying almost close to 60% of the data from Ethiopia, because Ethiopia now have 2 options of getting the marine cable, either through Djibouti or through Mombasa, using our lines. So that's also another source that is coming on board. Data source is becoming much bigger. So those are primary source. I know we're moving also into consultancy. A few guys, I think Mwache Dam want to shift the line, so we're coming into that in terms of being able to invest, give them support to come on board. Then another source that will come very soon is once the regulations are passed by EPRA, you know, there's regulations on open access and bulk supply. These allow consumers, whether it's KenGen, to talk to Tatu City, negotiate a tariff, how much they'll sell power, then they pay transmission tariff. So they only pay for the wheeling tariff. So there's a chance large power consumers might also be wanting to buy part of the power outside the normal KPLC, whatever, and buy from somebody and only pay that. So we see that also becoming quite big. Or somebody, maybe, let's look, Devki in Samburu in Mombasa has excess 20 megawatts. In his power plant in maybe Thika does not have adequate power. So he can push his own power and only pay for whether it's one shilling or something. Our tariffs are not announced, but whatever amount, and use the power on their side.
And so pay for it.
Yeah, he only pays for the wheeling tariff and uses his own power. Yeah. So that's going to be, I mean, there will be a lot of dynamics in the energy sector will change quite a lot. So the areas of earning revenue for Ketraco become more and more. Then look forward to one day, maybe government having an IPO for Ketraco and allowing us to plow back the money in infrastructure and allowing the company to make some tariff from it. So at least company is sustainable.
All this optimism that you express, do you have a timeline for it?
Yes, in terms of all the fiber that exists, so that's an ongoing project. The consultancy is ongoing; it's just now expanding it. The issue of the bulk supply and of power, open access, is just waiting for the regulator. So if the regulator signs off that next month, that's a resource that comes on board. So these are already moving items that are ongoing. I was challenged by one of my seniors, and the question is asking me, like Power Grid 30 years ago just depended on government, but right now they stopped depending on government, actually paying the government back. So the question was, he asked me, 2-4 years, can the government think about reducing his shareholding in KETRACO and allow you to plow back the money, improve efficiency, and make some money?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me something. Philip Kisia, former Nairobi town clerk, right, says, why is the cost of electricity per unit in Kenya much higher than in Uganda, Tanzania, and Ethiopia?
I think when it comes to generation, we're more or less almost par. But remember, power from even the power we buy from Uganda and Ethiopia we get power cheaper from even buying from them. So their cost of generation is much lower than ourselves. That's the starting point. Cost of transmission distribution should be more or less the same. I don't know how much taxes the load, because you remember, if you look at your bills when they used to itemize quite a number of things, there's the cost of power, but you also have a number of items. So they might not be the same country to country. So it's not difficult. It's not, unless you look at the breakdown, you understand. But it's both input costs, losses if they're there, if you can manage your losses, and other costs that are added to the power. So that's the formula to be used to find out why power is expensive in one area and the area. But definitely the power, even at generation level, Kenya is more expensive than Uganda and Ethiopia, and even Tanzania.
Cecilia Yewa wants to know from the KETRACO boss, who was responsible for the installation of the electricity posts from Bondo to Luanda Kotieno and its environs. The majority are leaning precariously and posing serious threats to life and property.
Okay, those poles
You're
will actually be
line?
for Kenya. No, it will be Kenya Power Lines. KETRACO deals with 132 kV and above, which will be typical on steel stanchions. Yeah, so that's Kenya Power. So I'll only have to carry the question to my sister agency, and either REREC or Kenya Power, they should be able to handle that directly.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to get lots of feedback. Ayub, I think you have lots coming in, right?
Including some for you.
Including some for me. Is it for that factory you have in the house?
We'll talk about that. So let's sample the feedback if Monica can put, yeah, here we go. Nyantika Chester says, which entity are you? KETRACO, Kenya Power, Kengen, GDC Kenya. By the way, that stands for geothermal.
Geothermal, yeah.
GDC Kenya. EPRA, which is the Energy Petroleum Regulatory Authority, does what, when, where, and how have their operations been synchronized to ensure effective service delivery and ISO standards are met?
I think all these organizations have very clear mandates, extremely clear mandates, and the reason why the government set up both KETRACO, Kenya Power, and the rest is definitely improving efficiency. Example, KETRACO, Kenya Power, when you took over, we have increased the grid by 3 times what was there before. Kengen has multiplied in terms of the amount of generation that is available in the country. GDC has assisted to accelerate the exploration of wells, geothermal wells, because there's a high risk at the beginning. So we have done more wells exploration under GDC. So everybody has clear mandates, and we do different things at the same time. EPRA is definitely the one who is a regulator, is the referee looking at both sides to ensure that work is properly done both sides. We actually ensure that both consumer is benefited from it, and the whole sector is actually run in a very feasible way.
Okay. The next one is from RMA_Kiberenge, says electricity is a key enabler of development, yet the unpredictability and high cost of electricity in Kenya is an impediment to progress. What is KETRACO doing to enhance electricity generation and supply security? Okay,
cost again, just a summary, because I mentioned earlier, for us is to ensure that we get to sources that have cheaper power as much as possible, whether it's neighboring countries or even sources, whether it's geothermal, and bring them to the grid. That is one of the things that we're doing. We also reducing losses that come on board. So that's what we're basically doing to enhance the whole thing of generation. Transmission line operate at more or less at 99%, 99.9% availability. So we ensure that we have a stable grid.
Okay. It's Kipleting says, great insights from Engineer Mativo. When are they going to upgrade their system to a more sophisticated one? Do they have a power backup system?
Okay. It's not quite clear which system is talking about. If I could pick it from what we are doing as KETRACO, we are building a new national control center, deep in a modern facility that should be able to allow for more injection of renewable energy. That's what we do. But backup system, let me just take it, hopefully is a general question. One of the things that KenGen is doing is battery energy storage. So they just finished the feasibility studies. So very soon we'll have a battery energy storage to ensure that power can be stored and can be made available. All new power plants that are going to come on board, solar and wind, will definitely come with battery energy storage to ensure they're going to be able, we don't have the fluctuations that occur, but power is going to be available from them.
Okay. Sir Nixon Dugure says, 1, how much did KETRACO pay for the cancellation of Adani deal? 2, why does Kenya Power explain transmission lines failures and not KETRACO who owns the lines? 3, has KPLC transferred all transmission assets to KETRACO?
Okay, first, we have not paid Adani anything, so it's zero. There's no money that has been paid to Adani.
Second, do you owe them anything?
We believe we don't owe them anything. The second one is, what does Kenya Power
explain more?
Okay, still remember, KETRACO owns 66% of the transmission lines. The 33% still are owned by Kenya Power. The older lines that were there before 2006 are still under the ownership, and that's related to the third question. They're still under the ownership of Kenya Power.
Okay.
So it depends on where the fault has originated. Some of the faults actually come from the distribution system into the grid, and that's why Kenya Power, again, secondly, is the one that runs the system operator, is the one who has full visibility of what has caused any failure. Kenya Power has not transferred the assets. It's still work in progress. I think they're doing evaluation to hand over the sites.
It's an ongoing exercise. Okay. JKLIVE says, what's the impact of extensive periods that takes an IPP to close out a project with the government having your transmission business?
Extensive period that takes IPP to close out the project, I think, is to move a project all the way from commercial closure to financial closure, and there are quite a number of CPs. I think, coming from a government perspective, let me speak from the government. I think one of the key things, is one of the things because once we even close the commercial closure with Africa 50, the PP Act gives them 365 days to get financial closure. And one of the CPs is going to be a letter of government support. And that's what, I know it has never happened in 12 months, but that's what you're working on, to meet everybody to meet is part of the bargain, and to make sure that we don't have CPs that are left behind.
Okay. Okelo Mwalimu says, can the powerful engineer explain why it's too costly to connect a prospective power user to the national grid? Tell him that my home village of Nyore in Rarieda, this is in Siaya, has been put off from power connection by the high cost. Secondly, how can KPLC's monopoly status be challenged? Okay,
a couple of questions in that.
Two questions.
Okay, I'm sure he's talking about connecting to the medium voltage line or low voltage line, so Kenya Power will be the rightful entity, because maybe it's good for them to explain, because the target by government is by 2030, everybody should be connected. Access. So I know the areas that use the COSA program in the 14 counties, but everybody should get connected to power by a certain time. They are rightful in them then direct to explain in terms of the cost and how they're going to achieve that one. Let me not go into more details about that. KETRACO's monopoly status to be challenged.
KPLC's monopoly.
KPLC, when you look at the Energy Act 2019, by the way, the Act does not even mention KETRACO is by name or Kenya Power. It allows transmission licenses. That means there's a point where somebody can enter and get a transmission licensee. There's actually, the law allows for distribution licenses to come on board, not just Kenya Power. They even have a new player coming under the regulations called a retailer. So you can actually come as a retailer and take over, maybe, let's look at Tatu City. You take the license for that, and Kenya Power and KETRACO you have to give you non-discriminatory access to the line. So you can actually, it allows more players to come on board. I think it's just the actualization of the whole thing that is remaining, but monopolies will no longer be there.
Okay, all right. Mark_Makuda says, is IPP the best direction our country can take to tackle the energy mess from generation to transmission?
PPP.
I think it will always be a joint effort through both government borrowing from development partners and PPPs, having the private sector take a number of projects. And as I told Jeff earlier, we're basically talking about close to 20%, so there are not so many projects. but they need to be got done. The good thing about PPPs, one of the tests is efficiency, that from the time they start the project and all payments, whether it's contractor, landowners, will have to be done within a certain time for them to start getting paid their money. So there's they are pushed to actually become more efficient. So it's going to be part of the what you're going to be using as a country.
All right. So I meant to say PPPs, not IPPs. Crispinus Adam says the private power producers have been said to be selling power at an abnormally high prices compared to generation costs. Can this be renegotiated with the producers to review the costs as a way of lowering the power burden?
Okay, I don't know whether PPP, they are the ones who are responsible. Okay,
He means independent power producers.
Yeah, independent power producers. But I think it's more looking in terms of the thermal power, that the contracts that came under thermal power are the most expensive. I said earlier, average of 23, some of them are high. By the way, Moroni, the gas turbine in Moroni, which is the most expensive at 52 shillings per kilowatt, it does not belong, it actually belongs to my sister agency, KenGen, for example, doesn't always mean what I say. It depends on the technology that come on board and the contracts that are signed then. I think that's one of the things that what we need to be careful is that back to your Ethiopia line, the line has a capacity of 2,000 megawatts. It's selling power at 8.5 shillings per kilowatt. So I think that what Kenya can speak to here is that anybody who's coming on board has to justify why do we not pick more power from Ethiopia or our neighboring countries at a cheaper price? Why pick yours at X? So it becomes a way that we can use to negotiate these power plants. I think for this older IPPs is to increase demand so that their impact is lower. For example, I'm doing a line to Marekani, push more power from Olkaria to Mombasa. Therefore, these power plants will only operate in a certain time of the day only. So they reduce they generate less power, so it becomes less cost.
All right. Felix Ngetich says, great job hosting impactful conversations. Could you ask the managing director of KETRACO if he's aware that the power lines interfere with mobile networks in some areas? If he's aware, what's the plan to remedy? We appreciate KETRACO, but this issue affects humans, I think. This issue affects communication.
Okay, I don't know the factual...
The correlation.
Yeah, because I have my engineers and my staff, and I've been to many transmission lines, work with the line inspecting, and we use gadgets, because to a lot of maintenance, we used to have gadgets to capture the information, and it works with the same principles. So I don't know, maybe he has a particular phone issue.
Or maybe he has a unique telephone, mobile phone.
Yes, but we do on a day-to-day basis. So far, I don't know about this. Maybe you can, later you can definitely write to info@ketraco.co.ke.
Okay.
And I can have more information.
ketraco.info.ke.
Yeah.
Okay. Henry Wajeta says, what are you doing to arrest those who are connecting electricity illegally? Like here in Mathare North, most of the buildings, their power is not paid to Kenya Power, but to individuals.
Cartels.
So you have a whistleblower.
Cartels.
Yeah, basically, again, back to Kenya Power, to Institute. To me, and one of the things that were being pushed by, I think, our seniors some time ago, some of these areas, maybe Kenya Power might get a retailer to manage those areas and pay them directly so that they don't have to follow every individual person, but let them be able to answer that better than me.
Okay. So it's an agency, every agency with its mandate. Danson Mukile says, what's EPRA doing to prevent the resurgence of substandard motorist fuel with recent V-Power scandal? Is there, okay, so we move to next, okay. Monica says we move on. Mike Jones Moore says, please ask the MD why they are fixing us token meters that are faulty and then using the old accounts to bill us. The most painful thing is their estimations are just outrageous and exaggerated. We are paying for bills we don't even know where they get the readings from.
Well, Jeff, I think I'll request you to host Kenya Power to come and speak to their consumers.
Yes.
Because some of the questions are really personal. Yeah. People are asking about their bills. And I think that is where people actually want to see how it touches me as a person. And we need Kenya Power to open up and answer these questions.
I hope they're listening.
I mean, I'll definitely carry everything we discuss. I can assure I'll talk to Rasiro in the morning.
And we hope you convince them that they come on the bench. Okay. Wanjiro says, lovely to see politics take a backseat on JKLIVE. Engineer Mativo seems hand-on with answers on fingertips. How cheap are the business opportunities he mentioned? And is KETRACO raising awareness so Gen Z or the youth can join or tag along in the business openings?
Okay. One of the things definitely we're doing, and once the regulations pass, is open up to people to buy actually power, not from only one source, but you actually can negotiate with a power generator and get power less and actually pay for the wheeling. So it's going to completely change the way we know power is done in Kenya. I mean, it'll be like other countries. London, you can change the same way to change as a phone. Today we're this company, tomorrow that. That should be possible in a short time to get that. So things are going to change and no longer be the way they are. The part of Gen Z, one of the things we are pushing, Africa 50, let me take the PPP part of it, is the local content. That schedule has to come out very clear. What are Kenyans benefit from it? What the law says, 40% and other things, business opportunities. So it's part of the schedules that are required to get in terms of how do people, because they're going, once successful, they're going to be here for 30 years, how are they going to ensure that skills are passed? Kenyans are going to be running that. So that's one of the things we're doing to allow more and more youth coming on board. But one of the things on Tuesday, I think we advertised for pre-qualification of suppliers in Ketraco and asked, well, please apply, whether it's the job of bush clearing. I have so much work to be done in different areas. Please look at the newspaper, put especially the young people, because those ones don't have to go through a thorough process of being registered as suppliers. Talk to the banks. The banks are always ready to help. And I'm sure Stanbic and the rest can always help to package them to be able to undertake a lot of work. To me, it's possible.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well done. Good mention of Stanbic there.
Yes. Sawa, wacha tuingie zako sasa.
Zanani?
Wekesa Mukiavi says 50,000 kwani unafanyanga welding kwa nyumba. So this in reference to your earlier statement.
Yes.
Yeah. Jethro says, evening Jeff, ask our guest about certain meters whereby if I think he means you buy a token, it shares it with you 50-50 on 50-50 basis. Could we be paying some loans?
I know there's a time some meters, again, I want Kinyampua to speak for themselves, when they loaned, when people are getting connection at zero cost, that the money that was loaded in the token you have to pay back. I know there's something like that, but please invite Kinyampua.
Okay. The next one is from Karen Sarafin, says, Jeff Koinange, ile hot shower connection inakunywanga maji ajab. Jaribu maji ya karai.
Sawa.
Caleb Fred says, 50,000 is more than any salary I've ever earned. Jeff, which side do you face when praying? Have you been to Jerusalem? BVB Benson says, Jeff gets rid of posho meal in your house.
Kuna posho meal, eh?
And the last one from Mina Chepkemoi says, electricity bill amount is all about your discipline on the use of electric gadgets in your house.
Engineer said that earlier on. There's a message here from Gathoni wa Mushomba, Member of Parliament for Githunguri. She said, that guy, engineer, seems to know his facts and seems very sound and informed. Thanks for the informative segment. He should be the Cabinet Secretary for Energy.
No, my CS does an extremely good job, and especially the political part of it. We get so much support. We're really grateful for my CS and PS that come on board. But Jeff, can I say something about the 50,000? 50K?
Yes, please.
Yes.
And maybe it might not be right for me as a CEO to say this. I remember I got my SACCO dividends, and because solar panels have gone down. Actually went and put solar panels in my shags at home, and my bill came down by 79%. And I've looked at the numbers that are coming on board. Solar panels are going to be so cheap that everybody in this room will be able to get solar panels. I've seen in Germany, even the fence, they actually put in solar panels in balconies. They're going to be so cheap. That's why we need to reinvent ourselves as a sector. If we don't change, we'll be forced to change. Because everybody will have solar panels.
Yeah.
You'll be able to take care of your needs, lighting, everything else, maybe, and your fridge, everything can run on solar. And the price, I remember when I joined Ketraco 2010 and now, the price actually come down by 90%. Of the price that when I joined. And it's only they're becoming more efficient and cheaper to have panels on board.
So if we go solar, KPLC will be redundant at some point.
We need to, but remember, I told you there are large consumers like data centers, AI, the rest will come on board. EV, so it's going to be a plus here everywhere else to get everybody else. So, but consumer, I see it going down. I mean, the household consumers, the power needs because they're going to a lot of solar panels. And that side increasing. But I'm speaking to myself, and as I speak to my colleagues, we need to reinvent ourselves and try to manage this thing called cost. What is in our hands is definitely reduce losses. We have to work. Otherwise, we'll be some dinosaurs somewhere will people just be saying they knew a company like this?
Yeah, once upon a time. Engineer, we've had a very elaborate discussion and very informative as well. I'm going to give you the last word. A lot of Kenyans have listened to you, and you've opened their eyes in many ways. Going forward, go on, talk to them.
Going forward, we definitely want to have a system that Kenyans can be assured of 100% power reliability. From what we have seen from companies, I know one is Anath River, because the last time we saw a power blackout was the national blackout. You can see companies being able to expand. Think about a second million plant and employed more people coming on board. So I see ourselves in terms of Ketraco may not be able to employ more than 1,000 people. But if we give Kenyans good quality power, reliable power, and reduce the cost, I mean, it will be just natural that people are going to use power to do some economical activity. So that's what we're looking for in terms of being support. Again, there's a question that we come on board, and I keep on, let me just give you, Jeff, one comment. I'm looking at my transmission master plan, which you've been talking about, 8 lines. Now, my lines require 45,000 kilometers of transmission lines, conductors. Now, remember the circumference of the Earth is 40,000. So that's basically those wires. So the question we keep on asking ourselves, are we going to import all this material, or they're going to be made here? Are the insulators going to be made here? The conductors, at least a big part of it. With Mission 300 coming on board, where we plan half the Africa people to have power, do not have, are we importing material? So to me, it's just combining ourselves, thinking through in terms of where we are. We are very clear of the numbers we need to be. So how can we ensure that a big part of this remains in the country in terms of manufacturing? Because that's the only way our brothers and sisters will get employed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Engineer Dr. John Mativo, MD, Ketraco, thanks so much for your time, and wish you all the very best going forward. You've heard it from the engineer himself, folks. It is what it is. And power is not going to, it's not going to go away anytime soon. There will be blackouts, there's no guarantees, but hopefully things will be bright in the future. And I mean bright in all kinds of ways, bright future.
Bright means the lighting up of our
country.
Cities and our country.
Yeah. I mean, South Africa, remember when they had their brownouts last year?
Yes.
Pathetic to see,
The intermittent power blackout.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully we don't get there.
As long as you're paying the 50,000.
Oh, folks, remember, if it's Wednesday, it's all about those 3 letters on the keyboard that follow each other. JKL. Thanks so much for being a part of this show. Good night, good luck, and have a bright night in the future. Thank you.